My name is Greg Knapp, KCMO Morning Show, 576-7710. Get you on board. Bringing in Senator Roy Blunt, Republican, Missouri. Little update on everything that's going on nationwide. Senator, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Greg. It's good to be with you. I'm actually going to be in Kansas City most of the day today. Right now I'm in St. Joseph and going to be in Kansas City today, Springfield tomorrow. It's good to be home.
Good. Well, we're glad to have you. Hey, let me start with this fiscal cliff thing. We've got the Bush tax cut rates getting ready to expire. We've got this sequester deal that could cut our military, and we can't seem to figure out how to fix this thing. And a lot of politicians are saying we're going to do it during the so-called lame duck session. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I think it's impossible to predict the lame duck without knowing what happens Election Day. Hopefully what happens Election Day is that Governor Romney gets elected president and Harry Reid, after the first of the year, is no longer going to be the majority leader in the Senate, and I'm confident we're still going to have a Republican House. And at that point, the calculation is, can we get a better ongoing determination of this if we just begin to talk about what's going to happen in January and February rather than trying to make some deal with people who are leaving the Congress and a president who's leaving the White House. So I think this idea that all kinds of things that didn't get done this year for no good reason. There's no reason the Senate didn't have a budget. There's no reason the Senate didn't vote on appropriations bills and debate spending, except the majority, Harry Reid and his team, didn't want to do it. And so I'm not optimistic that same group is going to be able to get big things done in a few weeks after the election. And we'll see. If the election is status quo and President Obama is going to be going into a second term and Democrats are still in the majority in the Senate, we might as well go ahead and think about what work is going to have to be done. But that's not the place the country wants to be, I don't think, and hopefully it's not the place the country will be.
Well, let's take this idea. Let's say that everything goes the best possible of all worlds, where we have a President Romney, we keep that Republican majority in the House, and we get a Republican majority in the Senate. Now, at that point, when you guys are looking at, let's start with taxes. Well, if you wait till January 1, then those Bush tax cut rates do expire and everybody's taxes goes up across the board. Would you guys be looking at trying to do that tax reform that President Romney would have been talking about up until then, and then retroactively doing it back to January 1? Or would you have, like, let's keep all the Bush tax cut rates as they are while we work on that tax reform? You know, because businesses and individuals are saying, we don't know what to expect on our taxes.
Well, that's exactly right. People don't know what to expect on their taxes. They don't know what's going to happen to their utility bill. They don't know just how wild the regulators are going to be as things go forward. And so there's a lot of pent-up desire out there to do things. I frankly think, Greg, if Governor Romney gets elected president, that the lumberyard will be busy by Friday. I just think people are ready to do things. They want some signal that the government is going to begin to do things that make sense for the economy rather than continue to do things that don't make sense for the economy. It's time to look at the tax code in the ways that the governor's proposed and the ways and things that I've been for a long time. But that's going to take some time. It doesn't take forever, but it can't happen in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or it can't happen I think, under this administration. And so probably the best thing to do would be to continue the current tax structure sometime into next year with a deadline that requires us to look at a flatter, fairer, easier to understand system, both for corporate taxpayers and for individual taxpayers.
Gotcha. So a little bit of breathing room to get it done so that everybody knows, hey, your tax rate's going to stay where it was, and we're going to have a better thing done in maybe in 3 to 6 months, something like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then I think a President Romney and a new majority in the Senate, their energy is probably best spent by being as persuasive as possible to convince people that is really going to happen, that the ducks are in a row, that 51 senators and a majority of House members are prepared to do the things that need to be done within the 10-year budget window immediately. 10 years of solid tax policy, 10 years of good energy policy, 10 years of all the things that you can do with 51 in the Senate, and that takes a budget. You know, the insult to the country that the Senate hasn't obeyed the law for 3 years and passed a budget is unacceptable.
Right. So along with the tax reform, as you mentioned, energy reform and spending reform and fixing what the military budget's going to be, all that stuff's going to have to roll together into the big budget. All the stuff that hasn't been done really because the Democrats in the Senate have stopped any budget in the last 3 years. All that stuff has to get done as quickly.
Well, and amazingly, they're pretty open about why they're stopping these things. They essentially say, in slightly different words than this, but the message is always the same, it would be foolish for us to tell people what we're for. And I guess if I was for what Harry Reid is for, I wouldn't want anybody to know it either. But that's the reason we don't have a budget. That's the reason the House has passed a budget. The House has passed appropriations bills.
Right.
And the Senate for 3 years hasn't had a budget. And this year, before the election, hasn't had a single debate on the Senate floor about the specifics of how we're spending people's money. And
a couple of your Democratic colleagues in the Senate have even had the audacity to claim, well, the reason we can't pass the budget is because we don't have a filibuster-proof majority, but you can't filibuster a budget. So that's nonsense, too.
It is total nonsense, and the budget gives a majority of less than 60 the tools that you need to do things within the 10 years you're talking about when you're talking about a budget. That's why the tax cuts from 2001 ended in 2011. You had that 10-year window you could work in. And then, of course, the president, after the last election, said, boy, this wouldn't be any time to cut taxes with the economy in the shape it's in today. Well, the economy is in worse shape right now than it was the day he said that. And, of course, this is no time to slow the economy down even more by a tax increase that doesn't make sense, or across-the-board spending cuts are not the thing that anybody should do. At your house, if you're trying to decide what do we cut back, nobody says, well, we're going to take 10% out of our food budget, and we're going to use 10% less electricity, and we're not going to use the water as much as we have been. People say, okay, what can we stop doing, and what do we have to really cut so for our family to make the decisions that make sense for our family? We have to make the same thing happen in our country.
Okay, last thing, Senator Blunt. Last time you were here, we were talking about Congressman Aiken running against Senator McCaskill, and you had said, I wish that he had stepped aside, but you said, let's see what happens when we know he's in for good. We know that now, and you have said that you are now supporting him again. But what went into your decision, and how are you supporting him?
I'm supporting the entire Republican ticket, and that includes Todd Aiken, and I am doing everything I can to get people focused on the big issues the country is facing and the difference a Republican majority in the Senate would make. And the Senate's going to be closely decided. One of the questions people need to think about is, do you want another 2 years or 4 years of Harry Reid as the majority leader, or do you want a Senate that will pass a budget? Do you want a Senate that will try to get spending under control? And I'm trying to be sure that Missourians are understanding just how big the stakes are here and how important they are to the country.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to at the end. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And my last question on that is, do you know, is the RNC, I can understand not wanting to spend money. We don't want to get tied too closely to Congressman Aiken because of his comments about rape and abortion. We want to stay away from that. But as you mentioned, it's a big deal here on who wins this thing. Is the RNC and the Senatorial Campaign Committee, are they at least going to put up some money to run ads against Claire, if not for Todd Aiken?
Well, I know that I've asked them to look closely, to keep a close eye on this, and, they've got to make part of that Senate committee job of being the head of the Senate committee is making the difficult decisions. A few weeks ago, after I'd done 5 events for Heather Wilson in New Mexico, a week or so after that, her numbers were not what the Senate committee thought they needed to be. They got better after I was out there, frankly, not because I was out there, but because of other things that campaign was doing, and they pulled the money out. Well, she got within 3 points last week, and they put their money back in. And I've been assured by the Senate committee that they're watching this race closely. And if it gets to where you can take money away from some other candidate and spend it in Missouri because this race is close, I'm confident they're going to do that.
All right, good stuff. We appreciate the time as always. Senator Roy Blunt, thanks for being with us.
Greg, thanks for what you're doing every day. It's an important 28 days. Keep it up. The country's listening. They saw the Mitt Romney last week that I know and I'm for, and hopefully that's going to continue between now and Election Day.
Yep, we'll see. Thanks again. All the best.